Hey everyone, welcome back to Corporate Decoder, the place where we peel back the layers of corporate filings to reveal what's really going on behind the scenes. Today we're looking at CASELLA Waste Systems, and let me tell you, they're playing with some serious debt instruments. So CASELLA Waste Systems, a company you might know for managing garbage and recycling, has just announced a big financial maneuver. They've essentially repriced a significant chunk of their debt, which is a pretty dry topic, but it has some real world consequences for how they operate and how they'll handle their money moving forward. Here's the lowdown. Back in 2015 and then again in 2018, CASELLA issued some bonds totaling $30 million. These are like IOUs, a way for the company to borrow money. Now, these bonds were set to mature, meaning they needed to be dealt with. What CASELLA has done is a remarketing. Think of it like selling something again, but with new terms. They've managed to get a new agreement on $29 million of these bonds. They're paying off $1 million of the debt with money they already have, and the rest, that $29 million, is getting a fresh start. This is happening because the old interest rate periods on these bonds were expiring, so they have to tender them, which basically means offering to buy them back or reissue them. And here's the key change. They're getting a new interest rate of 5% for these remarketed bonds. This new rate will be in effect for a decade now until July of 2035. This is pretty significant. Interest rates dictate how much extra money the company has to pay its lenders. If rates go up, it costs more to borrow. If they go down, it's cheaper. They are essentially locking in a 5% rate for a decade. The fact that they're remarketing these bonds means they're finding new investors to buy them, or the original investors are agreeing to the new terms. The bonds are being guaranteed by all of CASELLA's subsidiary companies. This is important because it means that if CASELLA itself can't pay, its subsidiaries' assets can be used to cover the debt. It spreads the risk, which is common practice for companies. It's also crucial to understand that these bonds aren't a direct promise from their issuers, like the Finance Authority of Maine, concerning their general finances. They are specifically tied to the revenue generated from CASELLA's waste systems projects. This means if CASELLA doesn't make enough money from those projects, the bondholders might not get paid. These bonds are not a debt of the state of Maine either. They are paid back solely from payments CASELLA makes. Now, who can actually buy these refinanced bonds? The filing mentions they're only being offered to qualified institutional buyers. This means big players in the financial world, like large investment funds, not everyday investors. This is typical for certain types of bond offerings that aren't registered for general public sale. They've also attached a press release that details all of this. While this filing tells us about the logistics of the debt, that press release likely gives us more of the company's perspective on why this is good for them and what it means for their future operations. Now, this part is where they put on their legal protective gear. Companies always include forward-looking statements in these filings. This is basically a disclaimer. They're saying we're talking about what we expect to happen, but things might not actually turn out that way. They use words like believe, expect, and anticipate. They cannot promise that this whole bond deal will go through exactly as planned, or that the money they borrow will be used exactly as they intend. This is their way of saying, don't sue us if our predictions are wrong. They also mention that their ability to get this done depends on market conditions and getting all the necessary approvals. They point to their risk factors section in their annual report for a more detailed look at what could go wrong. This is like a company saying, here's our financial health report, and here's a list of all the things that could kill us. It's always good to peek at those risk factors to understand the real challenges. So what's the big picture here? CASELLA Waste Systems is doing what many companies do, managing its debt to potentially get better terms or more flexibility. Refinancing debt, especially with a fixed rate like 5% for a decade, can provide cost stability. If market interest rates were expected to rise significantly, locking in a rate is a smart move. However, it also means they are taking on this significant amount of debt for a long period. The filing is signed off by Bradford J. Helgeson, who is their Executive Vice President and Chief Financial Officer. This is the person ultimately responsible for these financial decisions. Now let's look at our opinion. CASELLA Waste Systems is in a vital but often unglamorous industry. Managing landfill and waste disposal services requires significant capital investment, often financed through debt. This debt remarketing suggests they are proactively managing their liabilities. Locking in a 5% rate for 10 years is a decent move in a potentially rising interest rate environment, providing predictability for their interest expenses. However, a substantial amount of debt, even at a fixed rate, always carries risk. Their ability to consistently generate enough cash flow from operations to service this debt is paramount. The reliance on specific projects for repayment, as mentioned, means that the success of their waste management operations directly impacts their debt obligations. We'd need to see their overall financial health, their revenue growth, and their profitability trends from other filings to fully assess the strength of this move. But from this report alone, it signals a company trying to secure its financial footing for the next decade, which is a prudent, if not exciting, corporate strategy. Alright, that's our breakdown of CASELLA Waste Systems debt refinancing. What's your take on these numbers and what they signal for the company's future? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If this analysis was valuable, hitting that like button really helps, and subscribe for more deep dives. Don't forget to check out the Discord in the description. Thanks for watching, see you next time.